Gazans are desperate for more aid.
Desperate Gazans ransacked aid.
The international community is trying to find new ways to get aid in and safely distributed.
Palestinians scramble to reach desperately needed food and medicine.
Israel doesn't want that aid to help those who carried out the October 7th massacre.
The problem is that Hamas is hijacking that aid, selling it back in the black market, and many Gazans can't afford it.
If more aid doesn't come in soon, the consequences could be disastrous for Gazans and for Israel.
It's not a good look for the Israelis who are managing aid going into Gaza to not support this.
So here are 4 ideas under discussion for increasing aid to Gaza. Number 1, the Rafah and Kerem Shalom crossings. Until now, humanitarian aid has mainly been entering Gaza through 2 entry points: the Rafah crossing on the Egyptian border and the Kerem Shalom crossing on the Israeli border. Aid for Gaza has been a controversial subject in Israel since the war started. Some Israelis fear that any aid will help Hamas survive the war. Some are outraged that Israel is expected to help a population that carried out or supported the October 7th attack. Some Israeli protesters, including families of Israeli hostages held in Gaza, have even blocked border crossings in an attempt to stop the entry of aid. The protesters want aid withheld until the over 100 hostages still held in Gaza are freed. Israeli officials have gone back and forth, sometimes insisting that aid needs to be restricted to place pressure on Hamas.
אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק.
But at other times insisting that aid will not be limited.
We welcome the ability to get aid to the Gazans that need it.
In recent weeks, about 100 trucks have been entering Gaza every single day. But that's way down from the roughly 500 trucks per day that entered the Strip before the war. The World Food Program has warned that the number of trucks currently entering the Strip would need to at least double to meet the basic needs of the population. And of the aid getting in, it seems a lot of it isn't being distributed efficiently. Videos show trucks being looted soon after entering the Strip. Israel says that there's plenty of aid trucks at the border waiting to get distributed, but that the UN isn't doing its job to distribute the aid. The UN says that the agency needs police to protect their staff and the aid from looters. Gaza's police, who are on the Hamas payroll, say that they can't protect the aid for fear of being targeted by Israel. And Israel says that anyone associated with Hamas is a legitimate target. So it's a wet, hot mess. At one point, Israel tried to reach agreements with powerful families in the Strip to take over these responsibilities, but working with Israel these days doesn't make you a lot of friends in Gaza. Attempts to get Israel-friendly Arab states involved in distributing the aid have also hit a brick wall. The IDF has personnel trained to distribute aid in combat situations, but it only recently started to acknowledge that soldiers are helping to secure some of the aid convoys. And the results haven't been awesome.
A deadly confrontation in Gaza over the distribution of humanitarian aid.
The chaos and looming disaster have led Israeli officials and world leaders to start looking for alternatives. Which brings us to number 2, a new crossing in northern Gaza. While things are bad all over Gaza, the worst of it seems to be in northern Gaza, where the IDF started its ground operation back in late October. Getting rid of Hamas meant leaving a power vacuum in the northern part of the Strip. With no one in control, the situation has spiraled. There's reports of severe malnutrition and a major lack of basic necessities. Aid intended for northern Gaza has to make a crazy journey from the southern border crossings up to the north. That means aid convoys traveling through combat zones and risking looters and hijackers in the many lawless areas created by the war. In order to solve that issue, one option being explored is opening a new crossing in northern Gaza. The new crossing would get aid straight to the people who need it in the north, lowering the chances of looting or getting caught in the crossfire. But wait, why wasn't a crossing in the north opened before now? For a while, the IDF had plans ready for opening another crossing, but never gave the go-ahead. Maybe because Israeli officials didn't see the situation as so desperate. Maybe because some members of the government are opposed to giving anything but the bare minimum to Gaza. Or maybe because such a border crossing would be opened right beside the Jewish communities where Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,000 people. Honestly, it's not a good look for a government that's already deeply unpopular among Israelis. But regardless of why it took so long to get to a decision, setting up a new land crossing will take time. And when it comes to providing food, water, and medicine, every minute counts. That's why the US, Jordan, and other countries have pursued another option in the meantime. Number 3, airdrops. Early in the war, Jordan and Israel coordinated periodic airdrops of aid to hospitals in Gaza. But as the situation deteriorated, the US and other world leaders decided to expand the airdrop campaign. Okay, so what took so long? If Jordan was airdropping months ago, why did the US only start now? Well, while airdrops may sound good in theory, in practice they're complicated and not very effective. Videos from Gaza show some of the aid falling into the ocean. This is footage of aid that landed in the ocean and then washed up on a beach in Israel. Other videos show Gazans rushing in crowds towards the sites where the aid fell, meaning there's still the risk of stampedes, and there's absolutely no one on the ground to do crowd control or effective distribution.
5 people died when a parachute failed to open on Friday. Another failed just this morning.
And after all of that effort, the aid that comes in from these drops is a tiny drop in the bucket. Those issues have some thinking that the US airdrops aren't intended as a real solution, rather meant to pressure Israel to come up with its own, more effective solutions. And if we're talking about effective solutions, there's one big one that everyone from Washington all the way to Cyprus is talking about. Number 4, the maritime route. Back in November, Cyprus announced it was exploring setting up a maritime aid route to Gaza. A month later, Israel officially acknowledged it was working with Cyprus on the plan. The idea is that aid would be inspected and collected in Cyprus before being loaded onto ships and sent directly to Gaza. In November, Cyprus's president said that all the technical details for the project had been figured out, but the plan never took off. Until now. The EU has brought this plan back to the forefront, and the European Commission president announced this week that she would be taking steps to move the project forward, maybe even in the next few days. The US has also said it's working on a maritime aid route, although they might just provide support for the route already being set up by Cyprus. The maritime route has a lot of advantages, including the fact that ships can carry a lot more cargo than trucks. But the plan isn't flawless. One big issue, Gaza doesn't have a port. So, the US just announced it would be setting up a temporary port on the Gaza shore to drop off the aid.
I'm directing the US military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters.
The port will reportedly be built by American engineers operating from ships offshore without the need for US troops to enter Gaza. In the meantime, the US is also reportedly considering sending amphibious warships from the Navy to ferry the cargo ashore. Yeah, I also didn't know what amphibious warships meant. Ships like these have been deployed by the US in disaster zones in the past, but Gaza isn't like other disaster zones. See, the US can't just send ships to the new port or to the shoreline and drop cargo off. That would just mean more chaos, stampedes, and looting. There needs to be infrastructure and people on shore to offload the aid and distribute it. While US personnel would usually be the ones in charge of all of that, the US has made it clear it does not want American troops in Gaza.
No US boots will be on the ground.
So, with a new port built or amphibious ships dropping off packages on the beach, who will coordinate distribution? Aid groups? The UN? Soldiers from Israeli-friendly Arab states? Israeli soldiers themselves? As we've seen, it's all easier said than done, especially when no one wants that aid getting into the hands of Hamas.